when we got together, we sort of generated each other. She was my inspiration, and it was just something that worked, you know, something that was right.
A life-altering phone call was made by Cher in 1974. David Geffen, who had the devastating effect of ending her marriage, was on the other end of the phone. He informed her, "You own nothing." He then left. After being together for 12 years, Sonny had hidden the fact that he owned 95% of their enterprise. The surprising remark he gave Cher when she confronted him told it all. "I always knew you'd leave me." Sonny had been playing this sick control game for 12 years before that. In the midst of the Great Depression, on February 16, 1935, Salvatore Philip Bono came into this world in Detroit, Michigan. He was the first son of Santo and Jane Bono's conservative Sicilian family and the third of their 3 children. His mother, Jean, was married off at the tender age of 14, in accordance with long-established Sicilian traditions. Marital bliss was short-lived. Sonny spoke about his parents' frequent public arguments in his memoir, And the Beat Goes On. Sisters Fran and Betty were Sonny's age when he was growing up. As an aspiring actor, he experienced the thrill of public acclaim for the first time in a school play. While growing up, his mother called him Sono, which eventually became Sonny. His dad would unknowingly nurture his son's musical talent by playing the banjo and accordion during family gatherings on Sundays. The Bonos had a tough time making ends meet, as did many other immigrant families. After fleeing his hometown of Montiel in Sicily for the United States in search of a better life, Santo found that employment opportunities were few. Everyone in Detroit was a member of another immigrant family, and they all clung tenaciously to their heritage. Even though Sonny's parents wanted him to go into medicine or law, he was never one to sit still in a classroom and instead found great joy in dancing and singing. The Bonos chose to relocate in 1942, while the nation was undergoing transformation due to World War II. After Santo secured employment as a truck driver in California, he led the rest of his family to the Golden State. They came in Englewood with a 7-year-old named Sonny. Big changes came with the transfer. His parents split up shortly after that. Although this rocked Sonny to his core, it also granted him greater leeway to pursue his dreams. There were fresh possibilities in California. Sonny learned at Englewood High School that charisma and humor were more effective than academics in winning people over. He began to shine in ways that were never permitted at school. It helped because he was very close to Hollywood, which allowed him to see the entertainment industry he would eventually become a part of. Sonny did not finish high school. Although Sonny's parents had hoped for a career-oriented son, he had other ideas. He was a truck driver, construction worker, butcher's assistant, and waiter all in one. But he never stopped pursuing his passion for music. He and a friend began playing at neighborhood hangouts after he spent $5 on a discarded conga drum. He developed as a performer via these intimate performances. Specialty Records, which featured artists like Little Richard and Sam Cooke, hired him as a songwriter in 1957 when he was just 22 years old. When Sonny's song High School Dance, the B-side of Larry Williams's smash hit Short Fat Fanny, reached #1 on the charts, he was catapulted to stardom. Both the Rolling Stones and the Beatles eventually covered his songs You Bug Me Baby and She Said Yeah, which he co-wrote with Larry Williams. Sonny had a natural talent for music that allowed him to succeed, despite his lack of formal instruction. Despite Sam Cooke's departure from the label before the release of his song I'll Come Running Back to You, which he created because, to his brilliance, he was elevated to an A&R position at Specialty. Sonny clearly has the ear and sight for greatness. However, things turned up badly at Specialty. The news that Sonny had been covertly working as a producer for other labels led to his dismissal from his position. It appeared to be a setback around 1958, but it really paved the way for the next major chapter in his life. Sonny ended up in Los Angeles' Gold Star Studios after he left Specialty. It was right in the middle of everything musical, and that's where he first studied under Phil Spector, one of the most influential producers of his day. Being around Spector allowed Sonny to observe a master at work, even if he was initially simply a gopher performing odd things and playing some drums. Jack Nitzsche was a struggling musician in 1962 when Sonny co-wrote Needles and Pins with him. Sonny was drawn into Spector's world after hearing the song, even if it wasn't a huge hit. The renowned Wall of Sound, in which Spector layered instruments to create the impression of expansiveness and fullness in music, was in the works at Gold Star. Sonny meticulously observed every step of the process, from the placement of microphones to the duplication of instruments and the assembly of complete sections. In the years that followed, Sonny soaked it all up. He observed the meticulous process of creating layered guitar, piano, and horn arrangements for blockbusters like Be My Baby, with each section being recorded many times until it reached perfection. As a result of that, he went from being an average composer to a competent producer. Sonny, according to critics who would later remark, even succeeded in making Spector's sound more approachable, less majestic, yet just as memorable. As he was getting a feel for the studio, Sonny was also subtly establishing connections. Harold Batiste Jr., who would go on to assist Sonny and Cher with their music arrangements, was someone he met at Gold Star. He had previously made acquaintances with performers like Larry Williams at Specialty, and his friendship with Jack Nitzsche persisted. The two would continue collaborating in the years to come. People in the business began to take note of Sonny, even though he wasn't famous just yet. Under the alias Dr. John, he allowed an obscure artist named Mac Rebennack to make an odd album in 1968 that drew inspiration from voodoo. Sonny had faith in it, but record companies were confused about how to use it. In his pitch to Atlantic Records, he facilitated the album's release. Later, Dr. John expressed his gratitude to Sonny for taking a risk on him, noting that he would never forget that favor. A guy named Sonny and a girl named Cher, who was 16 years old, met in a coffee shop in Los Angeles in November 1962. While he was 28 years old, she was just 16. Sonny was Phil Spector's assistant and had already gone through a divorce. At first, he wasn't even interested in Cher. He was more interested in her buddy. Except Cher sensed something immediately. Years later, she recalled how, upon first sighting Sonny, she felt as if the world had stopped spinning around her, because he was so unlike anybody else she had ever seen. Their differences were striking. Sonny was born in Detroit in 1935. He wrote his first song when he was 16 years old and dropped out of school to pursue music. Cher, in contrast, came into this world in California. Her acting experience included school plays and guest spots on television. At the age of 16, she too decided she wanted to be a celebrity in Hollywood and dropped out of school. Relatives and classmates recalled her as extroverted and gushing about her movie star looks. When Cher's roommates evicted her, Sonny offered to let her remain at his flat in exchange for cleaning, and their friendship blossomed into much more. Even though Cher subsequently confessed she never cleaned anything, she first replied yes. Sonny denied having romantic feelings for her at the moment, but as time went on, their connection blossomed. In hindsight, Cher clarified that the intensity of their connection was more about feeling than passion. It was almost like a father-daughter bond. Cher's mom had even mentioned that Sonny resembled Cher's absent biological father. That might help shed light on Cher's intense feelings of intimacy with him. They had progressed from housemates to more than that by 1963. Everything changed that night when they went to the movies together. They fell in love. Their intimate 1964 wedding took place in a room at a Mexican hotel near Tijuana. Their vows were solemnly made in an unofficial manner. There was a significant age gap between Cher, 18, and Sonny, 29. In public and on their TV program, they pretended to be married even though that was not the case legally. The couple didn't tie the knot formally until 1969, 5 years after their kid Chastity was born, the same year that most admirers thought they were married. When Cher wanted to become a singer, Sonny was a huge support. Cher was so nervous about playing in front of an audience that she first avoided the stage altogether. She was often outgoing and confident, but when she was forced to sing alone, she went into a complete shell. In 1964, her anxiety prevented her from achieving her dream of being a solo artist, as Sonny had intended. She would only be able to sing to Sonny instead of the audience if he was also on stage with her. Because of that, she felt secure. She sang with her gaze fixed squarely on Sonny in the early clips, hardly batting an eye at the crowd. He served as her anchor. It was successful. Over time, the once timid woman blossomed into a legendary performer, renowned for her audacious style, commanding stage presence, and brazen demeanor. They experimented with several personas and styles before becoming recognized as Sonny and Cher. They released a few of unpopular songs in 1964 while performing under the peculiar moniker Caesar and Cleo. Cher also recorded a solo single around the same period under the pseudonym Bonnie Jo Mason. Ringo I Love You was an homage to Ringo Starr of the Beatles, but it was also a commercial failure. Some radio stations refused to broadcast it because they felt her deep voice was too provocative for the early 1960s. The song Baby Don't Go, which gained some local notoriety, was their first minor hit. Sonny and Cher's lives took a dramatic turn in 1965. Midway through the night, Sonny composed a new tune. After rousing Cher, he invited her to join him in singing the song. It failed to impress her. "All right, I'll sing it, and then I'm going back to bed," she subsequently confessed. However, I Got You Babe was the song that finally broke them. Their meteoric rise to fame began on August 28, 1965, when it peaked at #1 on the Billboard charts. It had been difficult up to that point. No one could decipher their appearance. "We had a lot of trouble just because of our appearance," Cher said. When they went to England, where people were more accepting, they finally began to have an impact. Before that, they were kicked out of every single location they went. In that year, the song that Sonny composed as a pledge of support during their darkest hours sold more than 1 million copies and achieved gold status. They performed it together for the final time on Late Night with David Letterman in 1987, marking the end of a long and fruitful partnership. There was more to their ascent. 5 of their tracks were simultaneously included in the Billboard Top 20, an extremely uncommon occurrence at one point. Elvis Presley and the Beatles were the only other artists in history to do it. Immediately following the success of I Got You Babe, the duo's older recordings were released by record companies. Songs such as Little Man, Laugh at Me, Baby Don't Go, Just You, and What Now My Love began playing on the radio out of nowhere. They rode a tsunami of fame that swept them all across the globe after the torrent of releases. Along with their distinctive sound, the band's distinctive fashion sense came to be known. Bell-bottoms, fur vests, and Sonny's sagging mustache were instantly recognizable. Their variety program, Sonny and Cher, the Comedy Hour, which served as a national fashion showcase, attracted 30 million people weekly. Cher's daring fashion choices and Sonny's endearing eccentricity influenced style trends across. Cher wore a tank top and bright yellow leggings to a Hollywood Bowl concert, giving fans a glimpse of the daring design choices she had made over the years. She had completely embraced her status as a fashion symbol by 1971, when she began appearing on television in see-through dresses and feathery headpieces, thanks to designer Bob Mackie. With 1967's The Beat Goes On, which became Sonny's most recorded song and peaked at number 6 on the charts, they demonstrated their enduring power. Carol Kaye, whose now famous bass line provided the song its chill, hypnotic vibe, was one of several top Wrecking Crew musicians present during the recording session. With lyrics like, "And men still keep on marching off to war," Sonny explored the idea that while fashions come and go, certain things, like poverty and conflict, remain constant. The song's understated melody belied the depth of thought that the team was capable of. However, Sonny and Cher's luck began to run out in 1967. There was a rapid shift in the music industry only a few short years ago when their gentle, infectious pop melodies catapulted them to superstardom. Sonny and Cher's prim and proper appearance appeared quaint in comparison to the new psychedelic rock sound, characterized by raucous guitars and unbridled energy, popularized by groups like Cream and Jefferson Airplane. Sonny was resistant to Cher's desire to update their look, while Cher yearned to be relevant. Conflict arose as a result of that. Their third studio album was a commercial failure, failing even to enter the top 50. Furthermore, they now appeared to be living in the era of free love and revolt, thanks to their virtuous lifestyle, which had previously distinguished them. Young people no longer identified with their image of being monogamous and drug-free. The duo's precipitous decline was all the more surprising given that they had previously tied the Beatles and Elvis with 5 simultaneous top 10 songs. They risked $500,000 of their own money on the 1968 film Chastity in an attempt to get back on their feet. Produced and written by Sonny, the film was an attempt to establish Cher as a serious actress. They pledged their whole attention and even pawned pieces of furniture from their lavish Bel Air estate to help finance it. The bizarre and depressing film followed Cher's character, a lonely young woman who finds herself in a Mexican brothel. It was panned by critics, who felt Cher's role was lacking depth and dimension. After Chastity failed miserably, they were devastated, losing not just their initial investment, but also $270,000 in unpaid taxes to the Internal Revenue Service. They were on the verge of bankruptcy due to their unexpectedly high levels of debt. Record company executives stopped trusting Sonny as Cher's career manager when the film's soundtrack bombed as well. The mounting debt simply refused to go away. Because Cher was young and naive, she didn't understand the gravity of the situation when they took out a mortgage on their house. Sonny had set up his business to manage practically everything they did, and she eventually learned that most of her profits were going straight to it. She had signed contracts without realizing it, and now she had very little to show for it. Cher said she had placed her whole faith in Sonny because she had no idea what she was doing with money at the time. They had to downsize, reevaluate, and sell their possessions. In early 1969, around the time their picture bombed, they also had a daughter, Chastity. It was an irony that hurt. Then, just when all hope had been lost, they attempted something else. It was Sonny's idea to perform a live nightclub act. Glitzy dresses and Sonny's crisp suits supplanted Cher's hippie attire. Cher made fun of Sonny on stage based on their real-life disputes, which formed the basis of the performance. Even though Sonny wasn't a fan at first, the crowd went wild. Everyone was laughing at her deadpan quips and rapid wit. What began as a means of subsistence eventually became their path to stardom again. Fred Silverman, a CBS executive, caught Sonny and Cher on the Merv Griffin Show in 1970 by pure chance. The ease with which they bonded on screen shocked him. He couldn't resist the allure of the Americana Hotel's nightclub and went to witness their live performance. Sonny played the fool while Cher teased him, a dynamic that brought to mind Silverman's memories of classic comedic duos, but with a modern spin. When CBS was looking to expand its audience, Silverman believed they would be a great fit because of their youthful appeal. So he took a risk. He granted them a summer TV program based on that one performance. The Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour, a spin-off of the program, debuted in August 1971. What began as a modest test run became an instant smash nearly immediately after. Aside from Cher's tremendous vocals, the show's vivid staging, crisp editing, and ostentatious costumes were all groundbreaking for their day. The audience adored the outrageous graphics, musical acts, and light-hearted conversation. A huge decision was made by CBS, the cancellation of The Ed Sullivan Show, just to make way for it, because of how popular it was. The Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour quickly rose to the ranks of television's most popular programs. Things were unraveling behind the scenes while the world saw their onstage flirtation and laughter. It was a private split between Sonny and Cher by year's end 1972. Off camera, they hardly spoke, but on TV, they maintained their ideal couple act. Cher subsequently said that she had secretly fallen for Bill, the band's guitarist. She felt trapped when he kissed her backstage. He attempted to intervene when she informed Sonny that she wanted to depart. Even though she felt confined, like a prisoner, she stated that she would remain if given the chance to have her own space, some money, and greater independence. In spite of their breakup, they continued performing together for nearly 2 additional years. The spectators were completely oblivious. They were only maintaining the illusion. The performance continued, and the ratings remained high. However, a grim reality lay behind that triumph. Cher was seeing David Geffen, a record executive during that period. He stumbled onto something unexpected when he obtained a copy of her contract. Cher had no stake in the business, even though it went under the name Cher Enterprises. Sonny had 95% ownership, and his lawyer had 5%. After over a decade of working side by side with Sonny, Cher still had no money. "I always knew you'd leave me," Sonny continued, ignoring her confrontation. Cherie was taken aback. "That's not an explanation," she informed him. "Would you know how to do it? Through it all, I was at your side every single night and day." Sonny said nothing. The realization that he had manipulated their relationship and prevented her from having any financial independence hit her like a ton of bricks. Yet, the situation deteriorated worse. Cher was ensnared in what Geffen deemed involuntary slavery when he re-examined the contract. She was only an employee, not a proprietor. Without Sonny's approval, she was unable to access her own funds, sign checks, or even work, and the contract was still valid for another 2 years. Cher felt utterly crushed. "I was hit square in the stomach. The horror," she claimed afterwards, took days to really hit her. She begged Sonny to rip up the contract and divide the money 50-50. "I will not sign another year with CBS if you do not give me half," she told him. "We are not going to do anything." Even though Sonny protested, he ultimately declined. Sonny also sought a formal separation in same month. A week after that, Cher filed for a divorce. She repeated Geffen's horrifying language of involuntary servitude in her complaint. The extent to which Sonny had constructed the system to render her helpless had now dawned on her. At first, she couldn't believe it either. Cher had been an integral part of making their best songs and had been Sonny's rock both on and off stage, but he cut her off when she demanded a fair partnership, a fact he would later come to regret. "America will hate you and you won't have a job," he said, attempting to frighten her. However, Cher remained steadfast. "No longer can you dictate my actions," she adamantly stated. "I'm 27 years old." She had had enough of being manipulated. She needed to regain her future and nurture her daughter. An heated altercation ensued as they fought over property. Geffen escalated the situation on his own. Cher was with him at the time. While Sonny was in the studio one night, Geffen had security remove all of his belongings from the residence, including his girlfriend's belongings and clothes. They discarded everything on the street. Cher was reclaiming her life, and that much was communicated. However, Sonny continued to exert control over her following the divorce. Cher owes him millions to settle contracts she breached involving his business. Despite the treachery and the pain, she had to continue performing with him. Pretending as if nothing had transpired, she was compelled to take the stage with her ex-husband. The career of Sonny Bono plummeted after his separation with Cher in 1974. He had to contend with declining audiences and empty rooms after his time as a star on Sonny and Cher's Comedy Hour. His solo performances were unsuccessful. Cher's star continued to rise, but Sonny's quickly declined. Even as few as 10 people would gather to see him play. He was clean about how difficult it was to give up the control they had while they were together. People began to mistake him for the silly TV persona he had played before, which didn't help matters. Despite the acrimonious breakup, Cher was the one who declared he appeared adrift without her. His peak performance years were passed by the late 1970s, and he was ready to begin over. Unexpectedly, that tipping point arrived. Sonny decided to run for mayor of Palm Springs after grappling with bureaucracy over a restaurant proposal. As a joke and a washed-up star, many laughed at the concept, but in 1988, he astonished everyone by winning the election with nearly 60% of the vote, which was double the average turnout. Sonny said he would make Palm Springs interesting again by reviving downtown and bringing in music festivals. Just the day before, Cher had received her Oscar, and Sonny made a joke about how the news felt like a 1-2 blow. From 1988 until 1992, he served as mayor, during which time he leveraged his celebrity status to draw attention to local concerns and challenge the long-established political establishment that had dominated the city. But that wasn't the end of it. Sonny was a successful candidate for Congress in 1994. Not much was expected, yet he managed to surprise everyone. He maintained a level head, utilized humor to connect with others, and gave his all to his work. His charisma and humor made him famous in Congress, even though he never sung a song. His ability to make even the most grave politicians laugh at themselves was praised by the Washington Post as a rare talent of his. Even President Clinton spoke highly of him, noting that Sonny got his start in show business, but that he truly came into his own in the White House. Sonny was establishing himself as a revered public servant when he was re-elected in 1996. Tragic events followed. Sonny crashed into a tree on January 5, 1998, while skiing in South Lake Tahoe. Late in the day is a dangerous time to go skiing since skiers are exhausted and visibility is low. This was the conclusion of a 20-year run at that resort, although he had skied there before. Some suggested he disregarded red flags, while others brought up the fact that there had been tragedies on the slopes recently, such as Michael Kennedy's only days before. Following this, Sonny's pregnant wife Mary speculated that he could have been abusing pills, but toxicology results showed no narcotics in his system. The funeral for Sonny Bono was placed at Cathedral City, and the beat goes on. That's the simple but profound tribute to the man who went from musical success to public service, and whose music and legislation continue to reverberate to this day.